Oh, hello. I didn't see you coming in. Welcome to my world of stuff. I find myself at a loose end this afternoon. It's Wednesday afternoon, the 14th of August, I think. I'm in the cinema room, obviously. Can't decide what to do, what to watch. I've been reading for a little bit. I've been out. Yeah, it's time to crank up the projector, I think, but what to watch? Well, I'll certainly make some popcorn first. Right, well, the popcorn's on, but I can't decide what to watch. I think it's time for something retro, though. Let's consult the shelves. Well, the popcorn's done, and I've made my selection, and I scoured my Blu-ray shelves for a little while there, surprised myself by discovering I had a copy of Moana on Blu-ray, which I didn't realise I had. Film I'm going to be watching this afternoon, because I didn't fancy an epic, didn't fancy a big long two and a half hour thing. I picked Brightburn. Oops, too bright. Brightburn, this was released back in 2019, sort of what Superman might have been like if he'd come to Earth and been evil. Wasn't a massive hit, quite enjoyed it. There was talk of sequels for a while, but it really didn't do well enough for that, although it left itself open for a sequel, of course. I enjoyed this at the cinema. It stars Elizabeth Banks, David Denman, Jackson A. Dunn, and of course Matt Jones. So I'm going to crank up the old projector, and I shall do a quick retro movie review when we're done. Now, where's that popcorn? Brightburn was released in 2019 and is described as a superhero horror film, a new genre. I enjoyed watching that again. A very striking, very powerful and quite disturbing, unnerving sort of film, in fact. It's directed by David Yarovesky and produced by James Gunn of Guardians of the Galaxy fame, and of course he's now in charge of the DC universe, including Superman. And of course, Superman is what this film is sort of riffs on. The idea of this alien child who comes crashing to Earth, is looked after by a childless couple, and then develops into this superhuman being with incredible powers. This is what we have here, but it's a fascinating twist, of course, because the child isn't quite as benevolent as Superman and is quite the opposite, in fact. Film starts off with our hero couple, Kyle and Tori Breyer, who are living in a remote farmstead in the town of Brightburn in Kansas. This is the first sort of riff on Superman, of course, because Superman's capsule crash-landed in Smallville in Kansas. They're trying for a child, but they're not having much success. All of a sudden, there's a huge sort of a crashing, almost like an earthquake. Something's happened nearby. 10 years later, we find them still in the farmhouse, but they now have a 10-year-old boy who they have apparently fostered. He's called Brandon, and he's surly and taciturn, to put it mildly. He starts acting up a little bit, and the parents, who've not had any problems with him particularly, start getting a little bit concerned about his behaviour. Brandon, for his part, when he's left on his own, he discovers strange things. At one point, he's trying to start up the motor of a hover lawnmower, gets frustrated and throws it into the air, and it flies across the field. When he goes to reclaim it, he sees the spinning blade and feels compelled to put his hand in the blade. His hand is undamaged, but the blade is smashed. In the night, he hears strange noises, garbled language coming from somewhere. We see bright lights. He heads towards the farm's barn, and inside, hidden there, we see glowing red lights. It transpires that he's come from the heavens. 10 years earlier, something crashed on the farmstead, and Tori and Kyle took in this child. Now, we don't know about the adoption process, we don't know what happened there, but they ended up looking after this child who's come from space, and he has amazing powers, which he starts to use in very unpleasant ways. As I said, he's a slightly dour, taciturn child. He's a deep thinker. He's obviously lost in thought. He's obviously thinking about himself and thinking about humanity and the power that he has and how he can use it. Unfortunately, he decides to use it in nasty and unpleasant ways. First of all, against kids in his school who've crossed his path, and later on, others in the community who have displeased him. This is a very good, very unusual film. What it has is something which I suppose is in common with a lot of horror films, and it particularly reminded me of that feeling you get watching those Final Destination films. If you remember that series of films that came out in the 90s, early 2000s, and in fact are being rebooted. I believe there's a new one on the way. Films that were about groups of people who escaped some terrible catastrophe, a plane crash or a motorway crash or a collapsed bridge, theatre exploding, that sort of thing. Always about a group of people who had escaped death, but they shouldn't have. They should have been killed, and destiny and fate works then to take them down one by one. It has that creeping dread feeling about it. You know what's going to happen to this person, and as you see characters in certain situations, you're waiting for something to happen to them. And it's much the same here, because we know that Brandon's got extraordinary powers, and as he wanders through life and people start pissing him off, we're waiting for him to take his revenge against people. There are a couple of scenes that are quite unpleasant, actually, so I'm a bit surprised that this is a 15, because there's some pretty graphic body horror in this. Brandon discovers he has sort of heat rays, and he walks around with this sort of mask on, and he leaves this symbol everywhere he goes, and he does some pretty unpleasant things. There's a really nasty scene of somebody in a car because of his powers. He lifts the car up, drops it down, and the person driving the car, their head smashes face forward into the steering wheel, leaving a bit of a mess. He attacks somebody else with his heat ray and burns their head off, basically. Slices the eye open of somebody. Anyways, there's some really grisly, nasty business in this film, which makes you feel a little bit queasy. So I'm quite surprised that it's a 15. It was a 15 rated film, because it is quite strong. But it's very well done. It's well directed. It's a good cast, as I said. I didn't mention the cast, but we've got Elizabeth Banks, who plays Tori, the mother. We've got David Denman, who I've not seen before. I don't recognise the name, but he has turned up here and there in various bits and pieces. He's very good as the father, who he tries to be a good father to Brandon, but he gets exasperated by Brandon's behaviour and starts to get afraid of Brandon when it's obvious that he's something more than human. And we have the child is played by Jackson A. Dunn. Don't know who he is. I can't see that he's done anything else since this film. But yeah, he's very brooding and deep and not very communicative. And that makes him quite scary, quite disturbing, because you don't know what's going on there. It's a very well put together film. It's quite brief. It's 90 minutes, which is what I was after today. But it's very powerful, very strong. And it's obviously trying to set something up here, because at the end, over the credits, we have an appearance by Michael Rooker as a sort of a YouTube conspiracy nut. By now, Brandon is out and about. He's flying around and he's destroying things. He seems to be causing chaos wherever he goes. And there's a sort of a conspiracy theory character played by Michael Rooker who is sort of linking this together with other things that are going on. And it's clear that they were hoping to set up some sort of ongoing scenario which would involve Brandon and maybe other characters to create a Brightburn universe. For better or worse, that didn't happen. So what we have is a standalone film. It's actually really very good. The performances are excellent. It has that dread throughout it of something nasty's going to happen, and that works really well. I think that works to its advantage. So I'm quite pleased in a way it didn't spin off into other things, because I'm a little bit concerned about some of the horror films we've had recently, like Smile and Megan, which are having sequels, and you sort of think, it's a shame because the ideas were strong enough. It would just be nice to have standalone films. But there we are, that's Hollywood for you. But Brightburn didn't do the business. I think it cost about $12 million to make, and it made only about $32 million worldwide, so it wasn't a massive hit. It wasn't a flop. It covered its costs and made a bit of a profit, but probably not enough for the studio to say, yeah, we'll have another one of these. So what we've got is this one standalone film, which is available now on Blu-ray, may well be on a streaming service as well. That's for you to go and find out. But no, I enjoyed watching this again. It's an interesting film. And it's a nice, clever, and quite simple and obvious twist on the superhero thing. You know, what if Superman had been bad? And, you know, this could have been the result. So yeah, it's Brightburn. Really good, interesting, quite bleak film because, yeah, there's no good news from any characters in this film, let's just say. So I'm going to give Brightburn a good old 8 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Right, thank you for watching this brief off-the-cuff retro movie review. I'll be back soon with some more stuff. Before that, of course, like and subscribe. If you've just wandered in because this video's caught your eye, why not stick around? Press that subscribe button, press the like button, leave a comment down below. If you've seen Brightburn, what did you think of it? Are you going to watch it now I've reviewed it? Let me know your thoughts in the section down below. I'll see you soon until I do. Keep taking the stuff.